There's something I've talked about before, but I think sometimes you can mention something and people don't fully grasp the situation. And so when I was thinking about the sermon this week, we started in the book of Titus, and after last week, I felt like I'd been kind of waiting to get to the book of Titus, and then last week happened, and I kind of felt like we weren't ready to go to chapter 2 yet. There was still some stuff that had to be said before we could move to chapter 2. And as I was thinking about it, I was thinking about every time you get ready to go somewhere. And the crazy part is, I don't know if people look online at our sermons or not, but you'll see something interesting if you go and look at YouTube at our sermons. And I'm sure everybody's noticed this, but I just want to say it out loud. I wear the same exact shirt every week. Always have. And the crazy part is, it's not only is it here at church, but every Monday when I go into work, I have a Monday shirt. Every Tuesday I have a Tuesday shirt. Every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there is a shirt for each day, and it is the same exact shirt, and under no circumstances can you change that. And the crazy part is when I get home, I take off those clothes and I put on the same exact clothes every day when I get home. Always have. People make fun of me. People give me grief. But still I do it. And I've always told people, 90% of the reason I do that is because of a thing they call decision fatigue. I never want to be late for work or late for church because I couldn't figure out what to wear. There's no way as a guy that you can look cool by saying, hey, sorry I missed the meeting. I couldn't figure out what shirt to wear. You can't do it. It's a little bit more lenient for women. I know that they have a lot more selections and everything. But from a guy's perspective, you can't go to work and say I was late because I couldn't figure out what shirt to wear. It just doesn't work out that way. And so over the years, so that never happens, I just got into a pattern of, okay, this is what I'm going to wear this day. I never have to think about it. It's probably been 20 years since I had to think about what I was going to wear to work. It's a beautiful thing. Yes, people make fun of me, but that's okay. But as I said, that's 90%. 90%, that's why. So what's the other 10%? And the crazy part is that other 10% is probably, even though it's only 10%, it probably weighs out heavier than the 90%. And that 10% is this. Have you ever worn the wrong shirt? Have you ever worn a shirt for the first time and you're like, you bought it at the store, you tried it on, you looked in the mirror at the store, looked wonderful, you took it off, you put it in a bag and you went home. And then you're like, I'm going to wear that to church on Sunday or to work on Monday or whatever the case may be. And you go to put it on, and it's the last thing you do right before you walk out the door. You put the shirt on, and shortly after you put the shirt on, something doesn't feel right. Something is wrong with the shirt. And as you're sitting there and you're getting ready to start your day, you're kind of doing this. And that's all you do. You keep messing with that shirt because for some reason it's the right size, it's the right material. Everything on the package says this shirt should be okay. But something's not right. Something's uncomfortable with the shirt. And if you've ever spent a few hours at church or a day at work with an uncomfortable shirt on, you look like probably the kids are going to look next door. You look like they just had a bunch of Halloween candy, and you can't stop fidgeting. It's the worst feeling ever. And you feel like everybody's looking at you. If somebody out there today is wearing the wrong shirt, you will not be able to tell me what I said this week. If I called you 3:30 this afternoon and I said, hey, I just wanted to get your feedback on the sermon today, you'd be in trouble. You'd probably say, well, we had communion and we sang that fun song at the end. But what about the sermon? There was a fun song at the end. You wouldn't be able to answer it because you sat there fidgeting the whole time because the shirt was uncomfortable. So over the years, what I've learned, don't ever wear a different shirt. Stick with the same shirt. Stick with the same brand. Don't change anything. Because I don't want to be standing up here in front of you doing some weird motion because I'm uncomfortable. I'm going to act like I want to say, look at the TV, but really I'm just trying to stretch out because it doesn't work. But here's the truth. That feeling of wearing the wrong shirt and being uncomfortable, that's how I felt at church maybe the last month or so. Something's not right. Something's uncomfortable. On the surface, if somebody were to come in, they would look at everything and they would say, okay, they had their introductions at the beginning. They did their 3 songs. They did their communion, their offering, prayer requests. They did everything. On the surface, everything looks normal. But something's not right. Something's uncomfortable. Something's not the way it's supposed to be. And so before we can move on in the book of Titus, we have to have the uncomfortable conversation about why it seems that something's not right. We're going to start off, if you go to the first slide here, in Matthew 5, verses 23 through 24. So if you are presenting a sacrifice at the altar in the temple, and you suddenly remember that someone has something against you, leave your sacrifice there at the altar, go and be reconciled to that person, then come and offer your sacrifice to God. What are they saying there? They're in the temple, and they're getting to present a sacrifice. Why are they presenting a sacrifice? The Bible tells us that, when you've sinned and you've done something wrong, you have to go offer a sacrifice. So here you are, you're getting ready to go to the temple, and you're getting ready to ask for forgiveness for whatever you did wrong. And as you're there and you're thinking about it, you're getting in the right frame of mind. Just like we talked about in the communion today. Make sure that you understand what you're taking communion for. This is kind of the very similar thing. They're offering the sacrifice. We have Jesus as the sacrifice. It's a different situation. Obviously, Jesus is there, so Jesus hasn't died yet. And so they're saying, here you are. You're in the temple. You have your sacrifice in hand. And then all of a sudden you're thinking about how your week went and everything that, where maybe you messed up and that's why you're here. And as you're sitting there, all of a sudden you suddenly remember, somebody's upset with me. Now the interesting thing here is it does not say whose fault it is. It doesn't say what happened. It doesn't give a scenario. All it says is someone has something against you. I don't know about you, but that could be a lot of things for me. So somebody is upset at me for something I said, something I did, and it says, leave your sacrifice there and go and be reconciled to that person. Then, once you've reconciled with that person, then you can go make your sacrifice. I find that to be interesting. Before I can make my sacrifice, I have to go talk to somebody who's upset with me. And it says, go and be reconciled to that person. If we went around this week and talked to everyone, is there somebody out there who has something against you right now? Is there somebody who's upset with you? I can probably say yes to that pretty confidently. There are people out there who are upset with us, and it says, go and be reconciled to them. Before you can make your sacrifice and get your forgiveness, go and be reconciled. And again, I think the most important thing as I read this is it does not say whose fault it is. That's tough. If we go to the next slide here, Matthew 7, 1 through 5, and it says, do not judge others. And this is one of those things that I've always loved this set of verses. And it's something that people have talked about over the years, ever since I was a young child growing up in the church. It says, do not judge others, and you will not be judged. For you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. Before I can even move on to the next sentence, I find myself having to look in the mirror. Most days, I judge people pretty harshly. I don't like saying that. But even if I go back to the beginning of the sermon, if somebody shows up to work and they said that they were late for work because they couldn't figure out what to wear, I've probably already judged them. It's work. You're getting paid to be there. How can you be late for such a reason like that? That's stupid. So petty. But because it's important to me, I think that it should be important to everybody else. And so what I have done is I've sat there and I've said, if what is important to me is not important to you, then I will judge you, and that's okay, because that thing is important to me. And then what I have done is I have taught everybody else around me the same lesson. This is so important to me that if you don't do it, then you're silly. You're ridiculous. And I will treat you accordingly. So it goes on here in verse 3. And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? And what he is telling us right there, what he is using with that analogy is, that thing that you're worrying about with somebody else is small. And the crazy part is, you are spending so much time on that small thing. You're not looking in the mirror and seeing everything that's preventing you from having a close relationship with Jesus. You are so worried about all the little things that you haven't even realized that you've done 10 things to offend somebody else. I know, because I know me, and I try and talk openly about it as much as possible. I know that I have just tons of weird habits. And the crazy part is, the more you get to know him, the more you'll be like, oh, man, he's weird. As an example, just so we can be open and honest, I know this isn't going to surprise everybody, but I love candy. But if I am eating candy at work, you will hear the most interesting sound. That sound is the sound of me taking from the box of candy and laying it out on my desk and sorting it by color. Because you have to eat candy in a certain time, in a certain way. And I'm going to be honest with you, because this person is not here to defend them. They are next door to us right now. The first thing you have to do when you eat candy is eat the red ones right away, because red is bad. Red is a bad color. So when you are eating candy, you pour the candy out and you eat the red ones right away, because you don't want to have to sit there and look at the red ones the rest of the time. It makes complete logical sense to me. And the crazy part is, I do not know when I have started this, but I know that it's been at least 30-some years. I'm not going to improve. It's just going to get worse. So I want everybody to know, I am one of the weirdest people ever. I try and hide it as best as possible. But I'm a little cuckoo. We all have our traits. And if you were eating candy in front of me and you didn't eat the red ones first, I noticed. I noticed every time. The crazy part is, I worry that if I'm sitting there thinking about what order that you are eating your candy in, and you're trying to tell me a story, am I listening to you? Are you telling me about some huge issue going on in your life, and all I can think about is, they're not eating the red ones first? Whether you eat the red candy first or last, or in whatever order you want to, that is a speck. The story you are telling me about a concern you have in your life, or even if you just want to share something with me, if I am not listening, that is a huge issue. That is a log situation. If somebody is telling me something that is important to them, and I am not listening to them, that is what this verse would call a log situation. Who cares what order somebody eats their candy? That is a speck. That is nothing. Not listening when someone's trying to tell you a story? That's huge. And he continues here, and it says, hypocrite, first get rid of the log in your own eye. Then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. Take care of your issues, those weird things that you know are an issue. Take care of it. Again, this is what's interesting about these set of verses, is again, he's talking about looking in the mirror and addressing your own issues before you address those other crazy issues about someone else. That doesn't seem to be how we do things all the time. Let me tell you all the reasons that I am right, and it's justifiable why I believe what I believe. But don't tell me why it's not okay. That's not what I wanted to do. That's how we act. Let me give you 3 or 4 reasons why it's justifiable that I have my crazy thoughts. And again, all that means is I'm not listening. And if we move forward, again, when we have a situation like this, what we want to do is look at the life of Jesus. That's the whole point of having the Bible, right? The whole point of the Bible is to say, hey, look, let's see how Jesus handled this situation. How did Jesus handle this situation? And if we look here in Luke chapter 23, verses 33 and 34, when they came to a place called the Skull, they nailed him to the cross. So again, here we are, we're having a conversation. Jesus is on the cross. We've talked about this before. Here's Jesus on the cross. This is our Easter sermon right here. And the criminals were also crucified. We talked about them, one on his right and one on his left. And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing. So here he is. He's up on the cross. He's been nailed to the cross. And around him he has 2 criminals. And it doesn't say it right here, but they've been mocking him. One of them has. And in his mind, he's thinking, he's looking out at the situation. and everybody who's responsible for putting him up there on that cross. And he says, forgive them. And as he's sitting there thinking about forgiving these people, or as he has forgiven them, the soldiers gambled for his clothes by throwing dice. Every single parent out there, I just want you to think for a second. Have you ever been guilty of somebody hurting your child? They come home from school one day, they tell a story about how their friend hurt their feelings, and then they say, but I've forgiven them. Did you as a parent forgive them just as quickly? Most parents, when they find out that somebody made fun of their kid, they're looking for them next time they're at that school. In your mind, you're thinking, how dare you do that to my wonderful, perfect child? But the interesting thing that we know here is that whoever Jesus forgives, God forgives. So God is sitting there up in heaven, watching everybody treat his son a certain way. And Jesus says the magic words, forgive them. So even though God could bring fire or maybe just get them later on, God has to forgive them because Jesus forgave them. So in a situation where the people who are responsible for Jesus' death, they were forgiven. And so again, it puts us in a situation where, who have you upset this week, or this month, or this year? Did they try to kill you? Did they nail you to a cross? Did they do something so horrible that you had holes in your hand? Because Jesus told them that, hey, I forgave my people. Did you forgive yours? And if we continue here, what about Judas? How do we feel about Judas? That name is synonymous with being a betrayer. And so here we are in Matthew 26, verses 47 through 50. And it says, and even as Jesus said this, Judas, one of the 12 disciples, arrived with a crowd of men armed with swords and clubs. They had been sent by the leading priests and elders of the people. The traitor Judas had given them a prearranged signal. You will know which one to arrest when I greet him with a kiss. So Judas came straight to Jesus. Greetings, Rabbi, he exclaimed, and gave him the kiss. Jesus said, my friend, go ahead and do what you have come for. Then the others grabbed Jesus and arrested him. My friend, a man that he had spent 3 years next to. And here's the crazy part. Jesus knew the whole time. When Jesus looked at him and said, Judas, come follow us, he knew who he was. He knew that he was going to betray him. He knew that he was going to kiss him on the cheek one day and have him arrested. But he said, my friend. There are some people in this room that we look at, we can't call them my friend. They annoy us. They drive us crazy. They have these certain things about them. They drive us crazy. If Jesus can call Judas my friend, we can be a little bit more patient with other people. But again, maybe Jesus has a certain way of thinking because he knew that it was Judas all along. He knew that Judas was going to betray him. So does that make it any different? Maybe he kept Judas at a distance. We've all done that, right? I don't really care for that person. I'm going to like him from a distance. That makes sense. May not be right, but it makes sense. But what about this next slide here? John 21:15-17. What has happened in this situation is Jesus is risen from the dead. And there's something that's on his mind that he needs to take care of before he goes back to heaven. Peter denied him 3 times. Peter was his best friend. The Bible doesn't even make a secret about it. Jesus had a best friend. There were 12 disciples. There were 3 really close, and then there was one extra special one. His name was Peter. And when Peter saw Jesus get arrested, he did the thing that we just talked about. He waited at a distance. He looked on from a distance. And then, when people started catching on, hey, here's this guy who's kind of keeping himself at a distance. They said to him, hey, excuse me, sir, aren't you one of this guy's followers? 3 different times. Peter said, never seen him before. Nope, don't know. His best friend. We talked earlier in Bible study. How do these people still not get it? 3 years. 3 years you were Jesus' best friend, and when it was all on the line, you said, never met him. Don't know him. And Jesus says, before I go back to heaven, we got to have a conversation. And so he says here, after breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied, you know that I love you. Then feed my lambs. Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said, you know I love you. Then take care of my sheep. Jesus said, a 3rd time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a 3rd time. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. Peter denied even knowing him 3 times. But Jesus still said, I'm going to make this right. You denied me 3 times. Just tell me you love me 3 times. And we'll be okay. As we get close to finishing up today, I just want to have a clear moment of honesty here. There are times in this church we do not treat each other well. There are times in this church that we look at somebody else across the aisle and we say, you got some quirks I don't really care for. It's uncomfortable. It's not right. We will never get anybody else in this church if that's how we treat each other. So I suggest that we look at some of the verses from today. Because each of these verses doesn't ask that you blame somebody else. It asks that you look in the mirror and you reconcile with yourself and with that other person. I think what really made me think about the whole shirt situation, not to keep bringing it up, but I think it's fairly accurate. If you had a shirt that you wore one time, it was the most uncomfortable shirt in the world, what would you do with it? As I thought about that, I thought, if you were a woman and you had a shirt and it was uncomfortable, you'd probably do the right thing and you'd donate it. You'd go to the Goodwill, you'd donate it, put it in a box, and you'd give it to somebody else, and you'd say, hopefully someone else has better luck. Now, if you're a guy, most guys take a different approach. If either of you are different than me, I understand, because we've established I'm weird. If guys have a shirt, and it doesn't fit right and it's uncomfortable, they do one of 2 things. They either throw it away, or they do the craziest thing. They hang it back up in their closet, and it sits there for the next 5 years. And every time they see that shirt in their closet, they complain. And they whine and they cry about that stupid shirt. I'm never wearing that stupid shirt. Do you remember when I wore that shirt? Worst shirt ever. And it sits there. I want everybody to understand, and this will be our closing remark. How we feel about that shirt is how people feel about the church if they've had a bad experience. If they walk in this church and they have an uncomfortable situation, they may throw the church away and never come back. Or, every single time they drive by that church, they'll say, that's the most uncomfortable church ever. I did not like that experience. Again, I want everybody to go home this week and think if there's a relationship that needs to be healed. If you need me to help in any way, obviously I will help. But I don't want anybody to come to church and have it feel like a bad situation or an uncomfortable situation. So let's look in the mirror. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we are not perfect people. We make mistakes. We judge people. We get into our own head and we think that the way we do things is 100% correct when it's not. This week, please take time to show us where we're wrong. Please help us to see where maybe we need to apologize. And also, again, if somebody comes up to us and apologizes, please help us to handle that situation the right way. Please give us wisdom this week to handle these situations. In Jesus' name, amen.